The theme for 2022 continues at the vPub, and that is where we don't leave any stones unturned, where we could potentially discover some value. Value's all the focus for 2022, and tonight's focus is on something that could potentially uncover some value. Let's see, at the very least, let's see what it's all about. I'm talking about modified, undisclosed, and hidden malts. I'll see you all in a wee second. Hello, Whisky folk. Hello, everyone. Nice to welcome you again at the vPub. Nice to welcome you back for another wee Thursday night. How you all doing? Fantastic to see everybody hanging out and waiting patiently for me to get things going at 9:45 every Thursday night. Listen, I was sitting here enjoying a wee dram as I was getting ready and just doing checks, making sure everything was right, making sure the lights were on and the cable, the internet was plugged in and everything. And I'm watching everybody just kind of dropping in and saying hello to each other. And it's so fantastic. Everybody just genuinely asking how everyone else is and obviously picking up the discussion from the week before and everything. It was really nice. I got a wee bit warm and fuzzy inside as I was reading you all greeting each other. I love it. I really do look forward to my Thursday nights. Welcome everybody again to another wee Thursday night. I hope you can all hear and see me well. Tonight's topic is just me and Moan. I don't even have a guest for us at Speyside tonight. And I literally only remembered that a few minutes before I pressed the go live button. I completely forgot about us at Speyside. It would have been a perfect night to do it because there's no other guests on. It's just me. But that's okay, isn't it? It's okay if we don't do it all the time. We're fast exhausting all the core range whiskies that are out there playing that quite fun game. I wonder if anybody's discovered the new game that we've come up with for Dramface. On Dramface, they're now doing podcasts. And we've got this little game at the end called I Am a Distillery. And it's 10 facts, obscure to obvious. And the idea is that you get one guess and you put your bid in whenever that is going to be to pitch your guess. You only get one chance at it, of course, to see if you can beat and outwit everybody else that's playing along. It's a good game to play listening into. So there's another, if you like, these kind of fun little gamifications of whiskey that we come up with from time to time, you might enjoy giving the Dramface podcast a wee listen. It's been good fun recording it, and we're getting together again this weekend to record some more episodes because of how well it's been received. Everybody seems to be enjoying it. And since we're enjoying recording them, we'll give it a go. We'll go on your feedback. Tonight, talking about gamification, we will finish. We always close out on a quiz at the end. And tonight, the quiz at the end will be on theme. And I went through it here before I went live tonight, and I thought, oh dear, this is going to be tricky tonight. This might be a tricky quiz. So remember, it's only 5 out of 10 for a pass mark on the quiz at the end, but it might be a wee bit tricky. So I look forward to bringing that to you a wee bit later. Vidar Berg Nielsen has just joined Aquavitae Barflies. Vidar, thank you so much. Thank you for hopping on board and supporting being part of the Barflies. I got a really nice email recently from a gentleman who sits with his wife and enjoys the vPub every Thursday out in, oh dear, I'm going to have to guess now. I think it was Colorado, North Carolina. It was an American state with a C in it. I do apologize. But he was asking me about the funding. Why do I talk about the Barflies? Why do I talk about Patreon? And sometimes, it's obvious to most people, but it's worthwhile just to mention because the Barflies, that's joining and becoming a YouTube member. After the video is, I don't think you can do it while I'm live, or maybe you can because it looks like a friend just did it there, Vidar Berg Nielsen. But it's usually on a desktop. I think it's going to be tough for you to do it on a mobile. You can join and become an Aquavitae Barfly. It gives you access to the nice whiskey-related emoji and loyalty badges and things like that. But the main reason for it is that it means that I never need to switch on ads to monetize the vPub. We sit around for quite a long time, sometimes on a Thursday night. And for those that want to pick it up on replay, especially podcast style, they don't want to have to sit through ads. Nobody wants to be interrupted by ads. So because of the Barflies support, they pay $1.99 a month, dollars, euros, pounds, whatever, and I never monetize the vPub. Patreon is different. This channel, me, the independents, everything is funded through the amazing support of the folk. And Patreon, that's a different thing. It's a separate platform, patreon.com. If you just search for Aquaviti and patreon.com, or I think it's often linked. I should actually link it underneath, but I don't often do that. You can find, that's how you fund the channel. That's how you support the channel. That's what keeps it going. It's what keeps it alive. It's what encourages things to endure. I support a lot of content out there on Patreon. Most of it's whiskey content, if I'm honest. But the reason I support it is because I want the content that I enjoy watching, that I enjoy consuming myself, I want it to endure. And I watch more YouTube content and whiskey content than I do listen to Spotify or watch Netflix and all of these things. It's crazy. So that's what Patreon is, in order to support creators that you enjoy and encourage them to turn up every week and do whatever it is that they do for you. So I hope that helps. And I hope John, my friend over in, I'm sure it's Colorado, please, sit next to his wife watching us on a Thursday afternoon. I hope that helps clear it up for you. I'm obviously going to respond to your email as well. Thank you so much.
Sorry, could you say that again? My apologies.
I'm going to have to ditch my watch. I haven't had before I go live, because it's not the first time that's happened. Jimmy Legg is saying, no guest, no problem. So many great people here to talk to. And you're okay too, Roy. You're okay yourself, Jimmy Legg. Thank you very, very much, my friend. And thanks for your dram to start things off. Cheers to you. Let me jump in and welcome some of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. I did spot a comment from somebody who was sitting and quite happily enjoying an Machrie Moor. Yes, it was Jesse Artinsalo. Oh, it could be Jesse, I suppose, with that surname. But let's go with Jesse. I think probably Jesse. Machrie Moor cast strength in my glass with some water. And I'm really enjoying this dram. Jesse, I picked that up because it's kind of on theme tonight, isn't it? Machrie Moor. We know that there isn't a distillery called Machrie Moor. That doesn't exist. It's a brand. Somebody's invented a brand. Aaron has invented a brand. And Machrie Moor is the peated expressions from Aaron. Much like Ballechin is from Edredar, the peated expression, Ballantruan from Tom and Till, Kuboken from Tomatin. All of these kind of made in the same distillery, but branded as under a different name, and oftentimes made in a slightly different way. It's not just because they're using peated malt instead of unpeated malt. There can be other things that differentiates that as well. So you can understand why the branding is different. But we're going to get into all of that tonight, and we'll touch on that briefly. What I'm really wanting to focus on tonight is, why do these undisclosed distilleries, these hidden distilleries exist? What are they? What's it all about? How it could potentially help us as enthusiasts? Anyway, I've been looking for the orange, as I always do. Andrew M has just joined the Barflies. Andrew, thank you so much, my friend. Welcome, and thank you very much for your support. Tom Scarabus is saying, hey, Roy, got the North Star unnamed Orkney and the signatory unchill filtered unnamed Speyside ready to go. Right on theme, Tom. Fantastic. Superb. Sugar Kitty is saying that. Oh, thank you very much, Sugar Kitty. He's actually sharing the link directly to Patreon. Thank you so much. Ronald is here. Malt Minion is here as well. Good to see you, Chuck. Good to see you, Ronald. Lucas is here as well. Max Kreitner. Good to see you, Max. It's always nice to welcome you in, my friend. Chris Pollack. Frank Peathead. Falsgraf. Scotch on the Bayou. Leanne. Sorry. I'm not going to even say it. I'm not even going to say it. I should just take the watch off and throw it to the other side of the room. But if it's over there and she goes off, then I can't shut her up. Stephen Toth is here. Good to see you, Stephen. Nice to welcome you in. Donner Pass Whiskey. Tim, I believe that you might be on a day off today, celebrating. Was it Cesar Chivas? Was that the name? In California, you get a day off to celebrate the achievements of. I seem to remember that's what the holiday is in the West Coast. I might get the name wrong. Apologies, but it's nice to welcome you and Tim. Daniel Vermas is here. You star. Good to see you, Daniel. It's always welcome. It's always nice, to welcome you in here, buddy. I hope you're doing very well. Whiskey Influencer Tim is here. How you doing, Roy? Very well, Tim. Enjoyed hanging out with you. It's over a week ago now, isn't it? I did an interview with Tim. I think I mentioned it on last week's vPub. But Tim's account on Instagram, you can hook up to the Whiskey Influencer there. And under his video reels, you'll find quite a lengthy interview between us, but we were having fun, so we stayed on a wee bit longer. Good to see you, Tim. Marcus here. Bozio. Hi from Germany, or Bozio. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, my friend. I hope I'm getting close enough, but it's nice to welcome you. I'll be in Germany in 3 weeks' time. Can't wait. I'll be at Limburg. It's been a long, long time coming. There's going to be a couple of delayed 50th birthday celebrations for me. I was 52 years ago, but really it was in the tightest time of lockdown where we couldn't even leave our own house for more than a half hour's exercise. Do you remember those days? Incredible. So I pushed it out to 2021, obviously, and obviously I was locked down again for my birthday. So my birthday is happening this year. We won't celebrate my birthday, but we will get together and have a good time. That's going to happen in Limburg. I'm going over to Islay in June as well. More details of that to follow. And hopefully festivals throughout the year will get a chance to hook up and meet each other, because it's been a long time coming, hasn't it? Anyway, Bozio, nice to welcome you in. The Doggo84 is saying hi as well. Bozio and the Doggo84, it's nice to welcome you both in if this is your first time in a vPub. Hellswood is here like she always is. You star, Helen. I hope you and Andy are doing well. Peathead Frank, I've already mentioned you, buddy, but it's nice to welcome you twice, isn't it? Des is here. Scotty Monroe, Kilted Moose, you star. Good to see you in, buddy. Island Hopper Stewart as well. JV, we need you to get a Rolex so this doesn't happen. Oh, I like the way you think, JV. I don't know how long I would keep a Rolex. I don't think I can stretch, but it's a nice thought. It wouldn't interrupt me on the streams, would it? Alistair McPhail is here. He's in the UK right now, our friend Alistair. Good to have you in here too, buddy. I hope you're enjoying being back home for a wee while. Nielsen Gupta is here. The moderators tonight are Hellswood, Sugar Kitty, McAllen, Fine and Rare. I think I saw Alistair Gray in as well. So if you're trying to get my attention for anything important, they can sometimes help you. Rob Halford is here too. Good to see you, buddy. Malt Brother Ray. So many of you. Whiskey with Molly. Ben. Graham Young. The Whiskeyographer. Hi from Glasgow. Hi, straight back at you from Glasgow. Good to have you in, the Whiskeyographer. A brand new name. You're welcome here. Nice to have folk in from my own city too. Tony Nelson is here as well. Tony is fantastic. Tony was here in the first ever vPub that ever went live way back in the deep dark days of 2017, and he's still here tonight. Love it, absolutely love it. Right, Sutherland, Andy Cross, the Hogsheads. Good evening, Roy. How have you been? I've missed the past couple of weeks. I've been prepping for my move to Scotland after getting a job on Mull. Wow. That sounds like a lot of fun. Hogsheads, you're our contact for any time we need something from Tobermory, eh? Hey, listen, I hope the move goes well, buddy, and you never miss any time at the vPub. It's always there on replay. It's just here for when you're in the mood and you have the time. My friend Sandy McDonald is here as well. Sandy, always good to welcome you in, buddy. I hope you're doing well. John Manning, Jimmy Jazz. I've already mentioned my friend Jimmy Legg, and Gordon Fraser is here too. Gordon Fraser, Alistair Gray, and a few others I shipped some packages out to today. Fantastic. Let's go on with this. I'm going to keep these chats up. And if you're trying to get my attention, just type Aquavite as always, and it lights up in orange, and I can read it. In my glass is a dram I've already shared on the vPub just a few weeks ago. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop up tonight just to kind of clarify all of these kind of grey area of all this kind of layered branding and things that can happen in whiskey. And I'm not going to go into blends. I'm not going to go into blended malts. I'm just sticking in single malts tonight. And yet it can still be pretty confusing. Is this a real distillery? Is it open? Is it an old distillery that's not been brought back, but it's been rebranded and made it a different distillery and have just put the name on it? Is it just a name that somebody's made up? Is it a kind of a celebration, or is it It's very, very difficult to keep up. Even if you just focus on the whiskies that are actually called after the distillery that they're from, we're already well over 100 distilleries in Scotland, and it can be intimidating. So if you add in all these other brands on top of brands on top of brands, and all these historical products that exist too, it can very quickly get quite confusing. So we're going to kind of break it up into chunks, and we're going to focus on a couple of areas and talk about it in a much kind of more broad way. The first thing that we're going to talk about is brands and branding. Building brands specifically. We can tidy that up quite quickly because we talk about these quite a lot on the vPub, and we talk about them in the same breath as we do any other whiskey that we're enjoying. We've already mentioned Kuboken, Balechin, Old Ballantrae, and Machrimoor from Arran, all peated expressions from traditionally or distilleries that are more associated with an unpeated style. But there's much, much more like that. Think of Longrow, think of Hazelburn, think of even Coquerin. Think of the brands from Islay, like Port Charlotte, Octomore. These are all names of distilleries from the past that don't exist today. Not Coquerin, of course. Glengyle is genuinely the distillery there. But the rest of them are names of genuine distilleries. So they've brought back the brands without actually bringing back the distillery. There are much more as well. Think of Old Pulteney and Annock. Think of, well, there's an interesting one there that we'll get onto in a second, Singleton. That's multiple distilleries under the same brand. Glenord, Glendullan, and of course Duffton. So, there's lots of kind of branding that goes on, and they're not going to be opaque with that. They're not trying to hide anything. There's nothing undisclosed. But what they're doing is they're taking a product from their distillery and building it as a different brand for a very specific reason, to differentiate it from the other stuff that's made at that distillery, as in the simplest of terms. So I'm not going to focus on that tonight, because that's fair game in any other vPub. Any other time we talk about single malt, we don't differentiate if it's just a brand or if it's the name of the distillery. It's all single malt to us, and that's fine. You got this hybrid situation, as I mentioned there with the Singleton. They're building a brand there, but they're also putting in a kind of layer of opacity, aren't they? Because they want to be able to put in Glenord in that bottle, and people drink it as Singleton or Duffton or Glendullan. They do put it on the bottle, absolutely. Singleton of Duffton, for example, Singleton of Glenord, and depending on where you are in the world market, you might get a different expression. But generally, that's what they're doing there. But that's how Diageo have managed to get a volume product, something in the top 5 global bestsellers, along with the Glenlivets and the Glenfiddichs, for example. But they're using 3 distilleries to do that through a different brand, a brand building exercise under the Singleton. Then you've got lots of other brands, and these are still single malts, but they're nothing to do with a specific distillery. I'm talking about things like over my shoulder here, you can see.
I'm having trouble.
I'm having trouble too, Siri. I'm sorry, sweetheart, but you're just coming off. What? I don't know how to shut her up. If anybody knows how to... Hey, Siri, please go on Do Not Disturb mode all night.
Sorry, I can't help you with that on Apple Watch.
Oh, dear, 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 dear. None of my family interrupt me. The house is completely silent. Everybody knows that I'm live streaming, except for this wee virtual hidden person on my wrist, the undisclosed voice. I've got a Scarabus over my shoulder there, as you can see, and I've got another one here. This is still sealed. I might even open this tonight. These are still single malts. But one release could be from, it does say Islay single malt on the bottle, so we know it's going to be from an Islay distillery. But one of them could be from Bamore, for talking sake. The next one could be Illafroig. More than likely, it's going to be Colilla. That's what these are most likely to be, but it's not guaranteed to be so. There was a lot of suspicion when that first one came out a couple of years ago. Very good value, by the way, 46% ABV, non-age statement. There was a lot of suspicion that it was Lagavulin. I was one of the people that was a wee bit suspicious that it could be, but honestly, Lagavulin and Colilla are very, very similar at times, and it's far more likely for it to be Colilla. We'll get into that a wee bit more later. I think this one that I have in my hands right now, this is a batch strength version. I think this is definitely likely to be Colilla. Give your watch some whiskey, it will quieten down. That's a good idea, Jimmy. Just drop it in a glass. It's what a waste of whiskey though, right? And here's another one, one of my favorites ever. This is the 10th anniversary. It was quite expensive, honestly. I can't recommend it based on price alone, and probably it's going to be hard to get this now, but this is Port Askig, and this is an Elixir Distillers product. This is their 10-year-old expression that they brought out for their 10th anniversary. I don't know what whiskey is in this. I just know it to be sublime. I'm clinging on to the last few drams of this 10-year-old Port Asking because it's an absolute cracker. But what this does, whether it's Scarabus, Aerolite Lindsay, Port Asking, Smokehead from Ian MacLeod, so many other Finlagan, so many others, what it means is that they don't need to be forced to get the same whiskey from the same distillery all the time. They have the flexibility to mix and match and bring out different batches and different expressions under that same blanket brand. So it's much the same as the other whiskies we mentioned earlier. They're building a brand there. So this isn't hidden or undisclosed. There's no subterfuge going on here. What they're trying to do is brand something and trying to bring you a consistently good product each time. Forgetting about what the distillery it's been made at, they're just bringing it to you as a Port Asking or a Scarabus or whatever it may be. And that doesn't just happen with Islay whiskies. It happens for mainland whiskies too. What I've got here in the glass is slightly different. And I think what we're going to do is get onto that in a wee bit. But this, you might remember me opening this on the vPub when I was looking at blended malts. And this label says blended malt. I don't believe this is a blended malt. I don't think it is. And this is when we start to move into the area of alias whiskey. This is labeled as a blended malt, but we'll talk about that in a second and why I think is probably far more likely to be a single malt. Andrew Butler is saying that Port Asking is Caol Ila, the 28 is Laphroaig, and the 45 is Bunnahabhain, but most are Caol Ila. Andrew Butler, you star. And you're saying things as the community, I'm just reading out the comments, you're saying things that maybe I wouldn't say. And we're going to talk about that as well. Because while, Andrew, you know that, and you've probably got a good solid source for that exact information, and by the way, I agree with everything that you've just said, there's no way that you could reach out to the producer, Elixir, and say, I believe this to be X, can you confirm? There's no way you would get that confirmation from them most of the time. It's against what they're doing. Often you're going to get information from the inside, from people that know, people that are close, something like that, and they're going to tell you what it is, and you know yourself whether that it's the type of person and the type of role that you can trust that information. But it's never going to be published on the website. It's never going to be published on where you buy it from. It's going to be things that's passed through word of mouth. I'm saying this a lot tonight, but we'll get to all that a wee bit later. Luna Aaron is saying the Scarabus I had was most certainly a Caol Ila, such a wonderful whiskey. I don't know which one you had. Scarabus non-age statement was the original one. They brought out a 10-year-old. Both very good. Interestingly, I think I slightly preferred the non-age statement. I don't know why. But they brought out a 46% 10-year-old as well. Fantastic. So we've got the non-age statement original, then a 10-year-old. But the one I've got here tonight, I've had for about 2 years. And the reason I've never made a fuss about this, somebody sent me this for nothing. It just arrived in the post one day. This rarely happens these days because the word is out there. I don't give my address to agencies. The people that do have my address, I tell them to be careful with it. I just don't want whiskey turning up. It's a problem. Why is it a problem? Because I can't review this. So this was an important whiskey to talk about 2 years ago when it was available. And suddenly, because I'd got it for free, I just didn't want to have that discussion with anyone. So I just put it aside. No compliment slip. No, here's the kind of, the first ever R10 I received, turned up completely anonymously. And it took me so long to be able to talk about R10 because I didn't want to be seen as having some kind of bias. I'm not going to be biased. I genuinely wouldn't be biased, and I won't be biased tonight as I uncork this. But you don't want to have that discussion. I don't want to fight that fight. Patrons pay me to be independent. And I think it's important that if I judge a whiskey or if I consider its value, as is the topic in 2022, if I have spent my own money to buy that whiskey, it means that bit more. That's just my take. It is not one size fits all, and I do not want to criticize anybody else who's managed to fund their existence on YouTube or wherever else they enjoy their whiskey content. They can do it any way that works for them, but that's how I do it. So I don't want to say that's how I do it and then do it a different way. I hope that makes sense. Here we go. It's been a long time coming. 2 years. I don't know if you can still get this. I never even checked. Probably you can. Strong peat. Lots and lots of peat immediately. Wow. Sweet, sugary cask strength peat. It's batch strength. You don't see cask strength. So what they're doing there is they've got a vatting of numerous casks, but they've kept the ABV up high. Batch strength could mean that it's just vatted together and whatever the strength is the strength, but more likely they're adjusting it with a wee bit of demineralized water to get to whatever ABV they feel is optimal. In this case, it's a very healthy 57% ABV. So not strictly cask strength for cask strength's sake, although you could still put cask strength on there, I believe, although I think it's been tightened up recently. But the statement on this is batch strength. Straight out the bottle, neck pour. Lots of lovely light, saline, briny, clean, creamy fruits. Kalila, Kalila, Kalila. Someone in tonight who often gets a wee bit of a salt and vinegar crisp note from Kalila. So every time I nose a Kalila, I look for that. And just because you're looking for it, you'll find it. But it's not a thick, rich, dark, dense vinegar. It's a very light white vinegar, I think. And it's a nice thing. It's not an off note. But definitely salt. Cheers, everyone. Yeah, it's young, it's bright, but it's not jagged. It's not, so, you know, Opaque, for example, is a young, heavily peated spirit, but it's quite, there's still some rawness in Opaque. There's definitely more age in this. The sweetness comes through. It's a kind of sweet, white sugar, icing sugar. If there's fruit here, it's tart apple, a little bit of tart lemon, lemon rind, definitely salty, good finish, medium bodied, good, exactly what you would expect, and exactly in line with what you would expect from a Kalila. But I'm just riffing. I don't know this to be Kalila. There is no source that I can go to that will confirm for absolute fact that it's Kalila. So what I have to do now is buy it as Scarabus and just enjoy it as Scarabus. What do I know? What is fact? It's 57% ABV. I know how much I've paid for it. It tells me that it's a single malt and it tells me that it's from Islay. All of these things are enough. But we're enthusiasts. We're a bit more picky than that, aren't we? So when things are opaque, when things are kind of hidden, when things are, we know it's a single malt. What? It's so, why? Just tell us what it is. Come on, tell us. And only with time can you just decide, I'm not sure it matters. It's going to be a theme throughout tonight. For so many of us, it very much does matter, depending on what we're getting out of whiskey and what we're doing with whiskey. For me, sometimes it matters, sometimes not so much. In this case, where I'm only paying, I don't know what this cost. I think it was honestly about £50, maybe not even £50 at the time a couple of years ago. This is a good value product. This is batch strength, 57% ABV, single malt Islay whiskey. It'd be nice to put this alongside an Big 10, similar price. It'd be nice to put it alongside much more expensive Islay whiskies at higher ABV. Lagavulin 12, for example. Be interesting to see how this would come off against Lagavulin 12. Now, I'm not suggesting this tastes like a 12-year-old, but it doesn't taste young. I would guess this is a 7-year-old product. That's something of that order. Maybe even a wee nudge older than that. But it's nice whiskey on the neck pour. So let's move along to the one I was enjoying as we open tonight. This is not the same thing. This is an independent bottler. Cooper's Choice have brought this to us. Fantastic. It's Ward Head, and it says underneath Secret Speyside. This is a 23-year-old whiskey, cask strength. You can see the green labelling underneath tells us that it's been finished in a Calvados cask. Now, okay, this was all that was available at the time. There were some other versions. One of them was untouched. There was and another 2 finishes, I think, came out at the same time. All 23 years old. Ward Head single malt Speyside whiskey. Now, we all know that Ward Head is not a distillery, don't we? Malt Brother Ray is saying, how many Islay distilleries do sell cask to independent bottlers today? Not that many, I believe, so the chance it's a Clynelish is quite big. Absolutely. There are still, it's not just about who sells it today, it's got a lot to do with what stock. Remember, the whiskey that we enjoy, this one in my hands is 23 years old. The other one, I don't know how old it is, but I'm guessing it's somewhere in the order of 7, 8, 9 years old. The Port Askig is 10 years old. So a lot of it's going to be from stock that's been on the market or been floating around for a long, long time. This is a product of Scotch whisky dynamics. There's cask trading happens. So a distillery makes product. It makes more product than it needs itself, let's say, for its own in-house blending needs, for its own in-house single malts, whatever that may be. And the surplus it can trade in order to bring in other profiles for its blends to generate cash flow. It can sell rather than mature and wait and have to sit on the asset. They can sell it as new make and they can fill casks. And it goes out there on the open market. Other distilleries buy it up for the same reason that they might buy whiskey for their blends. Some of it ends up on the free market. Some of it becomes a commodity. Some of it ends up going through brokerages. When that happens, it means that independents are available. They can buy it, whether it's just someone on their own, whether it's a small company, a medium-sized company, one of the big companies like Douglas Lang, like Gordon MacPhail, like so many other Cadenheads, whatever it may be. But the bigger companies tend to buy new make, get casks filled, potentially their own casks oftentimes, and buy it in that way. So if it's smaller independent bottlers, or if it's people buying casks from cask trading companies, individuals, it tends to be from casks that are available on the open market through this kind of symbiotic interchange of liquid in casks that happens in Scotch whisky. It's not exclusive to Scotch, but it happens very, very regularly in Scotch whisky. In this case, we have an alias employed. Ward Head is an alias. Because the producer of this whiskey, we know to be, and I'm not telling tales out of school when I say it's Glenfiddich. So Glenfiddich don't want Glenfiddich being available out there in the market. They just don't. They don't want somebody else taking their brand and selling product that could potentially be inferior from their perspective, branded in an inferior way, handled in an inferior way, sold in an inferior way with the Glenfiddich name on the front. That makes sense, doesn't it? If somebody started up a broadcast somewhere and called themselves Aquavitae, you know, I don't know how I would feel about that. I want to keep control of my own brand with a very small b. So it makes sense that Glenfiddich want to do that, or any company wants to do that. Where it's uncomfortable for us, I think, is that there's also this idea that they can then control how much genuine Glenfiddich there is available on the market. And that then gives them the ability to still work the way they've always worked with cask trading, but also control the perceived rarity, scarcity, availability of their own product. Through managing their own brand, they can very much stay in control of all of these things. So that's how they get around it. And why is this called blended malt? Well, it even says on the label here that this is teaspooned malt whiskey, and that is that there's been a teaspoon for each cask. Or even if it's a huge vat, a teaspoon of something else. That's all it takes to render the entire vatting, the entire cask, whatever it may be, as a blended malt. 1 teaspoon from somewhere else. So then the idea of Ward Head, this is Glenfiddich with a teaspoon of Balvenie, and Burnside is Balvenie with a teaspoon of Glenfiddich. I hope I said that the right way around. I don't believe that the teaspooning actually happens anymore. I think it's a paperwork exercise. Maybe if it's during the vatting, it's easy just to take along a little sample bottle or something and throw it in at the vatting and genuinely teaspoon. But who's really going to be able to measure that? There's no witness. It's just becomes a paperwork exercise. So as soon as the stock goes out onto the free market, it's called teaspooned, and then that way they can never sell it as Glenfiddich or Balvenie or whatever, because it's not single malt anymore. The paperwork that goes along with the casks dictates that it's blended malt. Andrew Pearce is saying they possibly don't want it to be superior to their you guys are fantastic. There's Andrew Pearce in. Stealing the punchline I had for the entire vPub tonight. But it's wonderful, and you're absolutely spot on, Andrew. They don't want it to be superior to their branded product either. Of course they don't. And it can be that. Jimmy Legg is saying, Canada Aquaviti is not a bad idea. There you go, Jimmy. You've got a new product. I could franchise things. Maybe that could work. Do you think that could work? Canada Aquaviti. That could be tremendous. Neil Sengupta is saying, I've never heard of Scarabus. Need to check it out. Scarabus is as we've already talked about, it's a single malt whiskey from Islay. The owner is Hunter Lane, but it's available from any retailers. I don't know if the batch strength is still available for sale. Don't know if the original knowledge statement and then the 10-year-old as well. But don't just go on my word for it that these are worth your while, because there's not a lot of money involved in any of these. These are brought out as reasonably priced products as well. Ask anyone. Go to a blind challenge that I did for Bart over at Scotch Test Dummies, where Scarabus played a part, and see how Scarabus does in the lineup. Again, that's a couple of years old, that video now. But I've used Scarabus at various guises time and time again, the same way I've used Port Askaig, the same way I've used Smokehead. All of these whiskies are capable, as Andrew Pearce has already pointed out, of being up to and beyond the quality of the other releases direct from the distillery. Genuinely, it's true. Andrew Butler is saying, I know of a distillery where a single bottle of one malt was poured into a hogshead of another to prove to someone it does happen, though I don't know what goes on when there's no witnesses. Yeah, I mean, to prove to somebody, it's fine. I mean, it's a labour thing. It's like, oh, I need to go and do that. I need to go and get that whiskey and do. Yeah, I've done it. They just write it down. I don't know. Maybe it does generally happen. But Tom Scarabus is saying, I think a distillery's lack of control over a whiskey being sold was the theory behind SMWS using numbers instead of a distillery names. Also allows for slightly less conventional finishes, etc. That's absolutely true, Tom, but I think it happened the other way around. I think they incidentally just started to use numbers and then worked out that it was going to be a really good thing long-term going forward to protect them. From 1983, 1.1, that Glenfarclas that they released, of course, we all know what the numbers are at SMWS, and if we don't, a quick Google search tells us. But it just started to happen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 originally, beyond, and they just started to name it in that way. It's just how it came about. I don't think in 1983 this was even a consideration. Single malts, you could lucky if there was 20 brands available of single malt on the open market, on the easy to access open market back in 1983. Drew from Arizona is saying, hello there, I was thinking of this would start in another 25 minutes. How's the time going? Are you a wee bit behind tonight, Drew? An hour because our British summertime has kicked in now, of course, Drew. Listen, you've not missed anything, let's be honest. A new name. It looks like Anthony. I'm so sorry. Anthony or Antoine Ham is saying, Aquavita, I don't understand the purpose of teaspooning. Can't they just label the whiskey single malt without disclosing the distillery? Well, they do that. But if you imagine that so much of this stock is traded for blending purposes, yeah, everything is about blending purposes. So it should not be detrimental in any way to teaspoon that cask. So the way for that cask to be safely released from the distillery and never be sold as Glenfiddich, not even a nudge and a wink, yeah, this is actually Glenfiddich, is to teaspoon it and to label it legally as blended malt. Now, if it's genuinely going to be used and consumed as a blending product, nobody's going to care because it's been used as an intended purpose. Teaspooned or not, it's going to do exactly what it's supposed to be doing. But if some of it was to leak onto the open market and be sold, they really don't want it being called anything but somebody with a nudge and a wink saying, actually, it's Glenfiddich or Balvenie or whatever it may be. So that's how they do it. They lock it down by saying, this isn't single malt, this is blended malt. Bud Jenkins is celebrating his pink barfly and being a member for 26 months. Bud, thank you so much for your support, my friend. Thank you, Star. Cheers. And it's good to welcome you in. God Fraser saying, of everyone who does what? And it begs the question of why teaspooning exists in this age of information. I'm going to get to that. Jimmy Legg is saying, that's an interesting question. What was available in 1983? That's a real memory tester. I don't think it's going to test either of our memories, Jimmy. Were you able to even legally consume alcohol in 1983? I certainly was not. But there was certainly a lot less available. And what was available was tended to be concentrated in Scotland and maybe south of the border, maybe the United Kingdom, the British Isles at the most. But export, it just really wasn't a thing yet. Of course, I'm not talking about Glenmorangie, Glenfiddich. I'm not talking about Glenlivet. I'm not talking about Macallan. You know, the big brands already had that established. Lefroy, certainly, so many more as well. But it wasn't many. Glenfarclas were around. As I think about it, there's more and more. But like I say, you know, 10 or 20, we're not talking a lot. So Donald Pass Whiskey Tim is saying, can't teaspoon cask be exported in the cask as a blend? And single malt must be bottled in Scotland. Thought that was the original purpose. That's a very good call, actually, Tim. Single malt can only be bottled in Scotland. So as soon as the cask is removed from Scotland, it can never be called single malt Scotch. But you can bulk export and export casks of blended whiskey in order to be bottled elsewhere. So that is also makes a decent argument, Tim. Absolutely. Glad you're here, buddy. And Andrew Pierce is saying some of the Vegas from North Star are interesting as it's labelled blended malt but have a distillation month and year, which mean they're surely a single malt rebadged. It can often be the case. Look out for that on the Vegas. But there was a time a lot of Vegas came from Edrington, and Edrington had a practice, and they're not unique in this, that they would vat malts together from different distilleries. So think of, they would have owned Glengoyne at one point in time. They would have owned Tamdhu, Glenrothes, Glenturret, as well as the big ones, Highland Park and Macallan. So they were taking these whiskies together, potentially vatting them, and then recasking them again for use in blends or for use as a premium blended malt, like the famous Grouse all malt. I can't remember what it was called now, the premium famous Grouse. There's a Diageo product as well, their 8-year-old special reserve. It was a Bell's brand, but it was actually all malt. Famous Grouse from Edrington was the same. So, you know, there's different reasons for doing different things. So not all Vegas fall under that. Not all Vegas would have a very specific detail on the bottle. They're going to be different things. That's certainly my understanding. Jimmy Legacy, not legally, but I may have consumed it anyway. I was 16, so giving away your age, Jimmy. 16, I'd probably started to dabble in a softer spirits, softer drinks rather, when I was 16. Lucas is saying Naked Grouse. Well, potentially Naked Grouse is a modern day product. It's a blended malt today, 40% ABV. A decent wee drinker, a decent wee sipper. It doesn't cost you a lot of money. It's very inexpensive. Often in the UK, it's £20 or thereabouts, and it's a decent dram. But I don't know how old Naked Grouse is. I think they're calling it something else now, aren't they? They're calling it just Naked or Naked Malt, aren't they? But yeah, good point, Lucas. Absolutely. Welsh Toro's in. Mrs. getting very cross, but I'm sneaking in a big love to the chat. You're a star, Welsh Toro. It's nice to see you around, my friend. It's always nice to see that wee Spanish bull raging in the YouTube chat. David Owen is saying, could Ian McLeod's as well get as we get it, okay, Highland be a young cast strength Glengoyne since they own the distillery? I would think it's possible. It's Ian McLeod, they own the distillery, but as we get it, not only just in the name, I think that that's more likely to be sourced product. some of which is going to make it out as a single malt as we get it. Some of that is well north of 60% as well. That range from Ian MacLeod. I would be surprised if any of it was Glengoyne, but it could be. It's possible, David. And Des is saying, I'm having a 21-year-old single malt from a mysterious Speyside distillery sold under the name Glenbrinth in South Africa. Glenbrinth. So there you go, Des. I have never even heard of that name before. Bottled at Bellshill, Glasgow. Fair price, just enjoying. So that's one to look up. There might be some intel out there on the internet, but a lot of these things can be market specific. So that Glenbrinth is an interesting one, right? Might just be something in certain markets, potentially, obviously, where you are in South Africa. But there's lots of names like that. Let's move on to give you some more examples of that. So we've talked about these aliases, these whiskies that exist. And I don't want to talk too much about it tonight because you might find that some of them are in the quiz at the end. But there's lots of alias whiskies out there for trading. So if you see things like Croft and Gee, that's a Loch Lomond, as well as Roche Dhu, and if you see Dunglass, that's an ancient, old, long lost name that was actually a peated product from Little Mill. There's lots of alias products. This is not a new concept. It's not just appeared very, very recently, but it started to happen more recently, but for a very different reason. And that is a lot to do with brand building and brand protectionism. So if you imagine that you've got this kind of flexibility there, the brands that are building for their own sake, the Port Askegs and things like that. Then you've got the brands made by the distilleries themselves, as an example, Longrow, Port Charlotte, all of these kinds, Kuboken. But there's something else happening as well. And the something else is what happens when some stock is picked up by an independent bottler. They've got some great whiskey that they think this is perfect to bottle. Where is this from? And with a nudge and a wink, they where it's from, but you can't label it as that. It can't be called that. I can't sell it to you. If you label it, you have to label it as something else. So then we are in the realms where they have to be potentially creative, potentially opaque, or potentially absolutely locked down, cannot say and we can never find out where the whiskey's from. Sometimes the bottler doesn't even know genuinely where the whiskey is from. Ryan Sutherland is saying Glenbrith will be a William Grant & Son brand if bottled in Bellshill, probably through their Quality Spirits International sub-company. That makes sense, but I wonder if it guarantees that it's going to be a Grant's distilled product. Jimmy Legacy saying, does it ever shock you how many places are represented in the vPub? I'm always surprised. I love it, Jimmy. I love it. I don't think we're missing a single continent. I really don't. Listen, there's well over 314 of you in. I see that the like thumbs up has gone to 100. Wouldn't it be amazing that all 323 now were watching if they all hit that like right now? It's very important to me and YouTube and what I do in YouTube, and anybody, any creator that's out there on YouTube. I'm just as bad at it. I forget to hit like. I've enjoyed a video and I think, great. Sometimes I'll even write a comment and still forget to hit the thumbs up, that like. And YouTube is very much counting those interactions. By the way, you can hit the down thumb as well. We're all ambivalent about it now since there's no counter next to it, to be honest with you. But yeah, by all means. But I would really, this jumps to 157. I love you all. You're fantastic. Thank you so much. But any creators that you're watching out there on YouTube, anytime you're listening to a podcast, anytime that you're reading a review or whatever, or you just enjoy some social media interaction, the more I do this, the more I realize how much the fuel, the currency of this content is that interaction. It's really, really super important, and I'd appreciate it. Doesn't cost you anything, of course, if you do, not just for Aquaviti, but anybody out there that you're enjoying. Ciao from Italy. Sandro's in again. Sandro, wonderful to welcome you back again. And Ronald is saying, I doubt we'd have someone from Antarctica. Well, no. I have had, now, you're going to call me out and say what was the name, but there was somebody stationed, and now they weren't there permanently. There was somebody genuinely stationed in Antarctica, and okay, they weren't tuning into the vPub from Antarctica, but I had to ship the merch to them at a very specific time so that they could collect it as they were traveling back from this environmental station or whatever they were on in Antarctica. And I'm going to count that as a tick. I don't know about, I've got people in so far north in Canada that they're almost at the North Pole, Alaska, Asia, all across Asia and things. And, you know, that's the wonderful thing about the modern day and the internet, that we can connect and do the thing and enjoy whiskey wherever you may be. It's wonderful. Quickly, the likes jumps to 185. Look at that, 199. That just means so much, because it means that you're genuinely happy to hang out with me and everybody else in the lounge. Michael Henry's in. Good to see you, Michael. It's always a pleasure to have you in, folk from the industry. And I can see Connell is here as well. Connell, oh no, that's not. It's Connell McKenzie. It's Connell. I'm looking at the wee. It even looks like a wee Ardnamurchan logo that he's got as his icon. Good to have Connell and to bring back named stuff. He's saying wink, wink. Well, let me show you how some of it is still named. I'm going to open one of these as well. I've been sitting around for long enough. But I've got two, interestingly, it just strikes me now that they're actually from the same company, but that doesn't really matter too much. I've got a North Star Indie here. And you can see the name is Lynch Isle, a 20-year-old Highland region single malt Scotch whisky. So this is not teaspooned because it says Highland region single malt Scotch whisky on the label. 53.3% ABV, 20 years old, fantastic presentation. And we also have a North Star product, but it's under a slightly different branding. So even the independents have got multiple brands, right? There's nothing to stop anybody doing this. And I think this is good fun. I bought this not because it was good value or because I was recommended or anything. I was suckered with this one because of the presentation. Doesn't that look, that kind of 19th century, really old school, Victorian style typeface and presentation? You know, this little kind of tubby bottle that it's in, the brown glass, everything about it is just, it's really cute. And actually, you've noticed that you've probably seen it over my shoulder here for long enough. This is the one I'm going to open tonight, actually. The label tells me that it's 12 years old, but it's from an undisclosed Orkney distillery. Now, we all know that there are two distilleries in Orkney, but one of them is the only distillery outside of Speyside owned by Chivas, Scapa. They don't let a lot of that product out there on the independent market. They really don't. In fact, the only stuff that you would occasionally see would be one of the distillery licenses from Gordon and MacPhail, but you might have noticed that that's even dried up in recent times too. So we know that this is an undisclosed hidden distillery, but we know it's from Orkney, so it can only be the other one that isn't Scapa. I'm not going to say where that's from, but you all know where it's from. 8 years ago, somewhere around that order, there wasn't anything on the independent market from this distillery. Or that's not true. It wasn't that there wasn't anything, but it was very rare. It was difficult to pick up this particular Orkney distillery from an independent bottler. They were doing a very, very invested job in building their own brand, and they still do that very much today. But what started to happen is that, this is me speaking loudly, I don't know for sure, but they had a distillery to build. And they needed cash to build that distillery. So suddenly you see a lot of casks suddenly available from this particular Orkney distillery. Potentially, this is where this little 12-year-old has come from. Now, I would consider this to be quite expensive. I've not even stuck my nose in it. I've not tasted it yet. But there's a 50 cl bottle, which I hate. Fine, this is a cute wee thing. It's quite nice. But 50 cl, but it was £50 as well. From memory, I think it was £50. So if you work that up, it's £70 for, albeit a very high ABV, 50% ABV, I think it is. Yep, 50% ABV, but it's a £70 12-year-old whiskey, and we don't even know which distillery it's from. So this is a clever wee gimmick here. Certainly suckered me. Well done, Ian Croucher. Right, he's put this together, and I'm happy to step up and pay £50 for a 12-year-old 50% ABV whiskey in a 50cl bottle, which I don't like, and I don't even know where it's from. Well, I do, but it doesn't tell me where it's from. They brought out other releases in this series since as well. I've recently seen a Loch Lomond Croft and Gay. This is probably the smokiest Highland Distillery from Orkney that I've ever stuck my nose in and picked up that much smoke straight away. And you know how much I don't pick up smoke normally. Again, it's salty and briny coastal. There's a nice lump of something mulchy or mulchy-esque. Let's go with an outdoor wet leaf type. It's not an off note. It's not bad. It's nice. But it's something damp, something outdoors. I'm close to saying mud, but you get where I'm coming from. It is mud. It's clay or mud. Wow. Fantastic. Straight at neck pour again. Okay, softer than the nose was going to suggest. There's a bit more prickle and heat on the nose, but it's soft on arrival. Slightly sweet, slightly drying. Clean. Again, the nose was going to suggest that there was going to be a bit of funk or something about this, but no, it's quite clean and it's quite sweet. This is all about refill bourbon, ex-bourbon to me. It's not there's not any kind of obvious sherry. If there is sherry in this, it's definitely refill. And there's no mention of the cask on this as well. So this is obviously a vatting. No mention of the outturn. Oh, sorry, it tells us the cask. It does. Don't listen to me. It says refill puncheon. 12-year-old 424. So this is refill puncheon would have traditionally held most likely Oloroso sherry, especially being Highland Park. It's got 424. 424. I wonder if that's a bottle number. And being a puncheon, it's most likely to be, if it's a modern puncheon, it's most likely to be made from American oak as well. But regardless, the flavour profile is very refill focused, refill hoggy, refill ex-bourbon. Clearly, it's puncheon. It tells me in the bottle that it is. Be nice to see how this opens up, how it gathers over time. But because of the thing that I've just shared with you about the availability of Highland Distillery product from Orkney, it's Highland Park. It's obviously Highland Park. Why am I dancing around? I've got so much of it now. I've got other Highland Parks from North Star. I've got other Highland Parks from SMWS, from A and other, from there's lots of it suddenly available now. And that's when you start to understand why this is important, because there's lots of Highland Park from Highland Park, more than there's ever been. So you can understand that they don't want to compete with their own product being sold from multiple outlets, from multiple people with multiple different labels on it. So they put the product out there and say, look, you can buy this, you can sell it as a single malt. You just cannot put Highland Park on it. So you need to say that it's an Orkney distillery, or you need to disclose it in some other way. We're fortunate that we know until such a point that there's lots of Scapa available there on the independent market as well, and there could potentially be one or the other. We're fortunate to know if we see a product from an Orkney distillery, there's a 90+% chance, 99% chance that it's Highland Park. Alistair Gray saying, such a light colour, 10th fill sherry cask. Aye, well, maybe third fill potentially. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing, especially after 12 years. Often there's, third fill for any cask doesn't necessarily mean the same thing, right? It's like It could be a third fill and the previous 2 fills has only been 6 months at a time. Or it could be third fill and the previous 2 fills have been 25 years at a time. So the second fill, third fill thing, go on flavour. That's always the thing. Can't find a rare saying, say hi to your new patron, Ross Brereton, please. Ross, thank you very, very much. If you've just joined me on Patreon, you are an absolute superstar, and I'll say thank you very, very much. Let's see. Yes, new patron, meet Ross Brereton. I recently got another message in from Inge and Brunswick as well, who joined, or I think rejoined Patreon too. And there's one that I need to, Chris Williams as well, I need to catch up with too, who's also joined recently on Patreon. But yes, Ross, you star, thank you very much. How nice for me to be able to welcome you live. And thanks very much, Doc, for pointing that out. So what we have here is hidden disclosed distilleries, but it's clear where they're from. Let's look at the other one here, a 20-year-old Lynch Ale. Well, clearly that's an anagram, right? It won't take you long to work out it's a Highland Distillery, and the anagram is Lynch Ale. You can work out exactly what distillery that is, right? I remember I think it was Dramfool a few years ago, put out a distillery from Kildalton Coast on Islay, and they called it Avian Gull, which I thought was quite clever. So Avian Gull, we know it's one of the Kildalton 3, which is Lefroy, Ardbeg, and Lagavulin. One of those 3, an anagram, is Avian Gull, and that's how they got around that to put out that product. That I can imagine how much more expensive that would be now. So we've got it's undisclosed, it's hidden, but we know what it is. They're towing the line. They're following the letter of the guidance, the letter of the law, but maybe not the spirit. They're letting people know exactly what's in the bottle. So we've got this obvious undisclosed distillery with a wee bit of knowledge, a wee bit of insight. You can work out exactly what it is. You don't even need the nudge and a wink from somebody in the know. Melissa is saying, Ross Brereton, he's saying, be sure to hold Aquaviti to the big hug that is included as a patron benefit. I am a hugger. I don't even care about the pandemic and things now that we're getting back into the world. If we can stand in the same space together, I still like to give people handshakes and hugs. Absolutely, Ross. Might not be your thing. We'll play it by ear, buddy. I don't know where you are, but we'll work out in the next couple of days. Falscraft is saying, talking about anagrams and such, to remember the beginnings of the independent bottlers and brand protection, it would be worth remembering the infamous Leapfrog whiskey. Well, again, it's one of those obvious brands, isn't it? Leapfrog. It's a Kildalton Coast whiskey again, but we often refer to that distillery as Leapfrog anyway, just kind of tongue in cheek. So absolutely, that Leapfrog is from Lefroy. Tim is saying, got a Whitlaw 5-year 46% scraped, recharged sherry butt. The fresh char, oops, let's slow the chap down. The fresh char masks the delicate HP heather peat. Unfortunately, some sherry cask flavours once you get past the char. Absolutely. I mean, we can even buy a distillery product that's from the distillery that doesn't taste as we would expect the distillery to normally taste. So it makes absolute sense that not every single cask is going to display itself exactly like you would expect the distillery character to be. And that's going to become more and more of an issue as time goes forward, because, not all the distilleries, certainly in the days of single malt, are keeping this fixed distillery character thing anymore. They're all playing. They're working with different barley, different peating levels, different mash, different fermentation, different distillation times, different cut points. And they're certainly going nuts when it comes to maturation in various casks. So that idea of a locked-in, consistent distillery character for a blended product, the more that people get excited about single malt, that's becoming more or less and less of an issue. So absolutely. Hellswood is saying, oops, it jumped again, Helen, I'm sorry. Yeah, I got you back. There's nothing finer than a Duff hug. Helen, thank you very, very much. There's nothing finer than a Hellswood hug too. Absolutely. Everyone is saying hello, ahoy, maltmates. Everyone, so good to welcome you in as always. Dominic Urban is here again. Good to see you, Dominic. Nielsen Gupta, Top Shelf Dustin. Fantastic to see you all hanging out with me. So here we go, obvious ones. So let's move on to the other end of that extreme, right? Let's move, because I want to focus on the kind of the middle point. So we've got the obvious ones. So let's move right across to the ones that we are never going to discover where they're from. I don't even know if the bottler for this whiskey I've got in front of me knows where the whiskey is from. They know where it's from in terms of region. They know the age. They know the ABV. They know what price point they can put it out at. And maybe is that not enough? Maybe they know where this is from, but they absolutely cannot tell. Usually there's some gossip and some chatter and some noise about where these whiskies come from. The Black Fridays from the Whisky Exchange are a great example. And various other releases that we've had over the years, but it's kind of nudge and a wink. This, nothing. I have no idea what this is from. This is a Watt whiskey. I think it's featured on a vPub in the past. A Watt whiskey, Highland Distillery. A 21-year-old single malt Scotch whiskey, cask strength 55.2% ABV, and that's all it tells us. You can look at the colour. You can understand that it's a sherry hogshead, selected by Mark and Kate Watt, distilled in 2000, bottled in 2022. One of 308 bottles, dry and dirty, sherry and peat, Dunwich warehouses. Okay, so we're getting some clues. Maybe they know. I don't know. Do I care? The geek in me, yes. I'd love to know where this is from. But it's a Highland that has peat available to them. Dunwich warehouses available to them. So that gives us some options. But do you know why I don't care about this? This was £90. £90 is a lot of money. But for a modern purchase, a contemporary purchase of a 21-year-old Highland whiskey at cask strength, at that colour, natural colour as well, from a sherry butt, or a sherry hogshead, sorry, we cannot. I think this is where we suddenly have something as whiskey lovers that are involved in the flavour chase. We have this avenue open to us. If we can disconnect from that need to know, this is wonderfully interesting whiskey. It is a bit dirty. I agree with the notes on the back. It is a bit dry, bone dry even, I would go as far to say. I would suggest that this sherry lovers would enjoy this just out of interest, but it might not be for everyone. It is quite dry and challenging. But I had only the second dram of this tonight before I went live, and I thought it was fantastic. For £90, I'm very, very glad to have it. Now, apparently there was a Dilluin that came out at the same time as the release, and the pick of the bunch was the Dilluin. Anybody that reads Dramface would have picked that up. But I went for the £90 cask strength 21-year-old. And I'm glad to have it. Let me ask you, for a sherry cask strength 21-year-old Highland whiskey, how much would you normally expect to pay regardless of what distillery it's from? An exciting distillery, a prominent distillery, a cult distillery, a whiskey with a big following, somewhere in the middle or somewhere not so chased. It doesn't matter. Even if you go to the value bottlers like the Cadenheads or whoever, if you're 21 years old, cask strength, £90 is good value by anybody's measuring stick. Thomas Elmer says that looks very similar to Kirkland Costco that we had for a bit. Should have gotten a case. There's a lot of it out there, and Kirkland was doing a very good thing. Kirkland was, I can't remember the company who was doing most of the Kirkland releases. It'll come to me a wee bit later. But you guys over in the States, over in North America, you did very, very well out of fantastic releases, Highland and Speyside whiskies under that. Often you didn't know where it was from, of course, but you were buying it up, as Thomas is saying, and enjoying it. You should have bought a case. We don't always need to know where the product is from. Jason Whiskey Wise is in Star. Good to see you, Jason, my buddy Jason, the first ever guest that ever appeared on the vPub way back in 2017. Good evening to you, Jason. It's nice to see you in. Rob Halford is saying, how do you decide which mystery distillery bottles to go for? Even independent bottling still intimidate me. There's so much variety, and I don't want to burn money on a bad bottling. That's why we're all here, Rob. That's why we're all here. I have to say that these aren't coming out every day. You know, it's occasional releases, occasional outturns, and these undisclosed things just pop up from time to time. Usually in the modern shape of independent outturns, you're going to see maybe half a dozen, 8 releases at a time from the North Stars, the Watt, Whisky, the Cadenheads, maybe more from Cadenheads, whatever it may be. And you'll see the occasional one that's a wee bit odd that has that kind of disclosed or undisclosed thing. Speak to the folk in the community. These are not the whiskies that people are queuing up and hitting F5 on their keyboard or fighting over each other, and that's been flipping fodder. That's not what these whiskies are, unless, and I'll get to that point. Gav's Drams is saying £91 for a 21-year-old is a bargain. Gav, I agree with you absolutely. And Jimmy Legacy, and I always need to know where the whiskey's from. You know, I could have somebody in the community. It's like, no, I just need to know. I need to know. Jimmy, I knew it was probably going to be you. I get it. It's not for everyone. But Jimmy, if you were sitting here with me and I said, here, try this 21-year-old Highland, and you'd say, oh, where it's from. Doesn't matter where it's from. Try it. Would you say, no, thanks? If I don't know where it's from, I'm not trying it. No, you try it. And hopefully, if I would only offer it to you if I thought it was something that you could genuinely enjoy, of course. And if you did enjoy it, you would suddenly either care a bit less or maybe care a bit more potentially where it was from. Terrific. Superb. So let's move on from, we've covered the obvious stuff where they pretty much tell you in the bottle where it's from, in the case of our Orkney here, in the case of our Lynch Isle, to the really other end of the spectrum, the obscure stuff where they don't tell us where it's from. And maybe they don't even know. But certainly if they do know, they're building their business and they want to be seen to have integrity. So if they've purchased it under the agreement that they just sell it as a Highland 21-year-old, then that's fine. Let's go to the middle ground here. And I'm going to open this one here. I'll get to that in a second. And I think it doesn't really matter about this. This is a company that doesn't exist anymore. I've had this for a long, long time. I've had this, I bought this last year, I think. And I did discover what this was. Nobody officially told me. There's nobody that would be willing to put it in an email what it was. And also I've got another one here. And I also understood under recommendation, friends, chatter, what this was from. One at a time, we'll hold them up. I've had this one open. This is the Balance series from Douglas Lane, Old Particular. This is an Islay single malt Scotch whisky. There isn't an age statement on it, but it does tell us a distillation year and a bottling year, so we can deduce that it's a 14-year-old from Islay. This was not cheap. This was just over £100 for this bottling. And I bought it blind. I hadn't tried it. But the people I was with, not only had they tried it and verified this is a really good whiskey, but they also, nudge and a wink, told me where it was from. Now, I'm not going to tell you that tonight. It would be rude of me to tell you that it's one of the Kildalton distilleries that doesn't begin with an L. But that's what I believe this to be. And that's the important word, what I believe it to be. I don't know for sure. Do you sense something here? Here I've got another one, a Highland Distillery this time. Let me hold this up. This is from the First Cask series. I don't know if that's going to focus on that to let you read that. I'll probably need to read it if it doesn't. Yeah, there you go. You can see that it's distilled at a Highland Distillery. Again, cask strength. There's an age statement on it, 16 years old, 58.3% ABV, £65. £65 for a cask strength 16-year-old whiskey. There's nothing to talk about. But what if I told you that this was a Highland Distillery that would normally be associated with the Men of Tain? I remember a single cask. This is a single cask coming from that distillery. It's 16 years old, the exact same age as this. And the distillery themselves was selling it at £450 a bottle from the exact same distillery that this is from. Now, it was for a very specific reason, a commemorative reason. It was a very exclusive bottle. It was a single cask. It was maybe an exceptional cask. But yeah, we understand why this thing is existing, right? So I can pick this up for £65, a cask strength 16-year-old product from that distillery. And you can see I've been enjoying this one. It's not fabulous. It's not the best whiskey I've had from this distillery, but it's very good. And every bit a value smash and grab bargain at £65. How do I know it's from that distillery? There's literally 2-3 dozen other distilleries that this could potentially be from. But with a nudge and a wink from chatter, there's some consensus. But we don't know. We just need to enjoy it based on the value proposition that it is. Here's my final one, and this is one I'm going to open tonight because it's been a long time coming. This is a lovely golden colour. I don't know if you can see. You just see my face through there, can't you? It's a really, really nice colour. This is right up my street. It's my favourite kind of whiskey. We know it to be natural colour as well. Again, it's cask strength. This is a 2003 distillation, a 14-year-old from a distillery in Speyside. And this is from the Creative Whisky Company. Creative Whisky Company was originally David Sturck, you might remember. It doesn't exist anymore. Which is a great shame because they had really some fantastic, exciting product that came out for a while, and there was never a dull moment with the Creative Whisky Company when they were releasing product. However, I believe this distillery in Speyside to be, with a nudge and a wink and a bit of elbow and a chatter, I believe this to be from a distillery that you not only would have to pay quite a bit of money to get product from, but it's very rare to ever see product from this distillery. It's one of the Dufton distilleries. And it's often cruelly, but fairly called the distillery that's actually a tin shed. So you might know, you might be able to work out what that is, but it's one of the Grants distilleries in Dufton, and it's not Balvenie, and it's not Glenfiddich. That's what I've been told. That's the chatter. So you can see the theme here. It's very easy, with very little comeback, for this to be abused. Let's imagine that our old particular here is actually just Clynelish, like every other Islay 14-year-old heavily peated cask strength whiskey that's available. I don't believe that it is. It's a delicious whiskey. I'm not even sure that I care. But I think I'm more interested in the fact of believing that it's that Clydalton Coast distillery. What if this was one of the AN other distilleries in the Highlands, 16 years old, cask strength, sherry cask. I think this is sherry cask. Let me see if it talks about it doesn't list the first cask series. It does. It tells us that it's a butt. So yeah, and that's in line with the color, right? We don't know for sure. There's nobody willing to put pen to paper or exchange an email to tell me that that's what it's for. And it's the exact same with this. When I bought this, I bought it because I got to try it first. I bought this in 2017, maybe 2016. It was £40. Those days are gone. We don't get that anymore. But at that time, from this same distillery, there was a 17 and a 23-year-old product. And despite there were 35 CL, there were tiny little bottles. And one of them was over £100 and the other one was 75. The 17 was 75 and the 23-year-old was over £100 for a half bottle. These, you don't see these generally. You don't see these available for sale, even as a branded product from the distillery. So I was very interested in this. And I recall that I enjoyed it. Sweet white stone fruit immediately. Bit more alcohol than I expected. I've stuck my nose right in there. I'll need to give it a minute. It's 54 something it is. No, sorry, it's 57.4. A little bit of white pepper, some boiled sweets, lemon, bonbons, that kind of thing maybe. This is smelling green to me, so I'm imagining a green confectionery now, and I smell colours. You know this, right? I hope you do too. Green gummy bears or something like that. Something sweet and green. Not vegetal, not herbal, not grassy, but that kind of green fruit. Aye, apple. Apple and lemon. But it's nice, it's soft. This isn't tart and citric. It's soft and sweet. Hardly any oak, hardly any wood in this. Everything is light. I just know that this is my style of whiskey. I know. So you've probably worked out what distillery we're talking. Sandra's suggesting Craigellachie. No, it's a Grant's distillery. Begins with K, ends in E, and it's got Kininvie in the middle. Butter. Excellent. Very chuffed. So sorry that this is long gone and you can't buy this anymore. It's absolutely fantastic. So good that I've waited. So good that I still have this memory. So it's butter popcorn, caramel, light caramel, a wee bit of nut toffee, kind of, I don't know, Werther's Original or something like that. Runny honey, clear runny honey. Some kind of wee... so think of the green candy, like a perfume note to go with that, like a... not rose water, but something along those lines. Longer finish. This has got to be a bourbon cask. Refill hogshead, perfect. 14 years, the sweet spot, and a refill hogshead from a distillery that we can't. And if, oh wow, if you could see that, I'm going to try and get that to focus on the glass. If you can see how thick that is, it's just hanging heavy on the glass too. This is a cracking whiskey. It's just an absolute cracking whiskey. Neck pour. It's becoming a wee bit more floral now. Even a wee bit of a kind of stone pebble mineral. Just what a thing, what a wee treasure to have. Now, I knew what it was, I knew what the distillery was, or I was led to believe, I knew what I was led to believe the distillery to be when I bought this, but £40, forget about it, we weren't, even back then in 2016, 2017, this was a bargain. Would I care if it's from that distillery? Honestly, no, it's incidental. Really, the reason that we love whiskey is all the things that we get to enjoy, to geek out about, really. It's all part of the package. But pick one thing. What is it? What is the main thing? And of course you have to answer it's flavour. Flavour is why we love whiskey. Flavour, flavour, flavour. And I think that if we're going to chase value, we need to put flavour first. Certainly we cannot complain about, oh, it's all getting too expensive, and then define what we want. We have to know where it's from, or all of these things. If we need to know all of these things, then we need to pay the money. If we focus on getting flavour for value, which I believe is going to be more and more important for me in the short to medium term, there are some things I need to put in a check. I believe this to be from that distillery, but it's all a nudge and a wink. I would love it to be from that distillery, because I guarantee you I'd have nothing else on the shelf from that distillery, I don't think. But if it's not, it's okay for me to just believe it's from that distillery. The most important thing is that it's delicious, and I'm very, very glad that my memory of this is in check. I've got glue on the side of all my glasses from all the sticky dots from the blind challenges. That's fabulous. I'm gonna let some other people try this. I think it's a wonderful whiskey. That butteriness, that texture is there. A wee bit of salted caramel. It's just my perfect whiskey, right? It's just refill hoggy, refill ex-bourbon, something like that. Teenage years, nothing else to talk about. Graham Young is saying, I'd prefer to know that it's a Kininvie, suggests Graham, before I purchase, so I could add a rarity to my shelves. Though a bargain is a bargain. That's what I mean. If we want to know, we probably, if we have to add a rarity, Graham, we have to pay for a rarity. We have to pay. But if we were just going to go, oh, just have a nice whiskey, the price is right. 21-year-old Highlander for £90. Cask strength. I mean, okay, even if that was today, it would probably be £70 now, honestly speaking, wouldn't it? 14-year-old cask strength whiskey. Who would pay it? I guarantee you would pay this. You would taste this and you would pay it and you would be very happy. Ronald is saying at the Falkirk Wheel, they sell whiskey from undisclosed distilleries. Seen it labelled as Highland single malt and as Speyside single malt. Happen to know where it's from. Ronald, I don't know. I don't even know the brand. Is it Falkirk Wheel brand? Is that some kind of independent special deal thing? It's been a long time since I've been out at the Falkirk Wheel. I think I remember seeing miniatures for sale there once. But I don't remember seeing a range of whiskey. Going to be interesting to look into that. I guarantee you, if you started asking questions, it might be one of those ones that you started to get some different answers. Gregor, time for a dram is in. I'll always recall a certain Mr. Duff's guffaw when I thought they actually teaspooned the casks, only to be so young and naive again. Listen, Gregor, I didn't mean to guffaw at all. I mean, maybe if I'm just in your company, it's just you and I, and we're having a bit of fun. Genuinely, there could be a scenario where maybe they don't literally put a tiny teaspoon in each cask. You know, they tap the cask, they take the bung out, they put a teaspoon in, then they seal it back up and they seal the bottle back up and they would trot on to the next cask. Even if they're doing it, putting a teaspoon into a huge vatting or whatever it is, it doesn't matter, because as soon as that's recorded in the paperwork, it is what it is. Nobody's going to taste it. I mean, it's just, yeah. Malt Brother Ray is saying we drink whiskey because of the total experience, the smell, the taste, the mouthfeel, but also the story behind the whiskey. Knowing it as a rare whiskey is part of the experience that we have to pay for. Ray, you're spot on. You're absolutely right. The same as Graham Young. Absolutely. We have to pay for it. We can trade here. Oh, well, okay. If it's a wonderful whiskey, do I really need to know where it's from? If I'm going to sit down with friends and say, wow, isn't it part of the story that we make together that we can dream or guess or have fun deciding where it's from, or the person who tells us where it's from, we decide who we're going to trust. I agree with you completely. And honestly, truth be told, at the end of the day, I'm no different from you. I'm no different from Graham Young. I would love this to be from that distillery because it's a rarity for me here too. But at the price I paid for this, I love enjoying whiskey. I love enjoying good whiskey. And if I get it at a good price, that bumps the value, that bumps the enjoyment up, not just for me to drink it alone, but to share it with people with impunity rather than have a rarity. I get the attraction with a rarity. I do, but it needs to be paid for. And I think that's my point. Falsgraf is saying, honestly, as long as I know it's not coloured, not chill filtered, and if it tastes good, I'm okay. I think all of the whiskies that I've shared with you, without exception, are fully natural. We've not even had to talk about that topic tonight, Falsgraf. It's all from indies. They tend to be speaking to us as enthusiasts. That's why we get the presentation, and it's why we get the nudge and the wink information, because they're actively trying to give us what we want. Ben Whiskey with Molly saying, I love the purity of a blind tasting. Not knowing where it is from and judging a whiskey purely on how it makes me feel and others feel is fascinating. Whiskey with Molly, Ben, you had 2 blind tastings, I think, at the end of last year. Both of them had the glass house, wasn't it? And it was that excitement of discussing that glass house, of how it outperformed itself. It's almost arguably a more memorable thing, isn't it, than a lot of the whiskies that we tried when we were together that night, or potentially when you were at that other tasting where the glasshouse featured. That is the type of thing that's fascinating to me, especially when you discover that it's a wonderful, affordable whiskey too. Michael Henry's, this is why it's fantastic to have barflies that are actually in the industry. Michael Henry saying, Aquavitae, time for a dram. It needs a minimum of 1 litre of another malt into a cask or vat when teaspooning to create the paper trail, but it does physically happen. There you go. And that's not with a nudge and a wink. That's somebody who's genuinely, they're not hiding behind an alias. Michael Henry's Michael Henry. So yes, take it from him. It does happen. Does it happen all the time? I'll let Michael decide. He could probably speak for his own product if he ever has to do that himself. But yeah, it needs a minimum of 1 litre That is interesting. Peter Lee is saying, good evening, sir. I'm late as usual to join. Peter, you've been working hard like you always do, and you're never late for the vPub. It's not possible, my friend, but it's nice to welcome you in. McAlpine Herrera is saying, great info from Michael Henry above. I agree, Doc, absolutely. And Gordon Fraser is saying, for me, it's the risk. How do you know that it'll be good if there's no etymology? Leap of faith, education, decision. I'm too inexperienced to know. Gordon, no, you're not. You're here. The crowdsourced intelligence that we have, especially when you gravitate towards friends and acquaintances and connections that have a similar palate to you, and as soon as they make one or two recommendations that just hit perfectly with you, that just hit exactly the sweet spot for you, suddenly the risk is much, much, much diminished. It's nothing compared to what it would be if you walked in solo and had to make a decision just being overwhelmed by a bunch of whiskies on a shelf. That's what we do. We all get together and we talk these things out, and we can share these wonderful whiskies, not just me present to you, but you guys exchanging in the chat. I think that's why it's wonderful. Notice Michael Henry has educated us on teaspooning, says Bud Jenkins. Fantastic, absolutely. How are we doing for time? An hour and a half in, my goodness. I think my takeaway is from all of this, we've had the obvious ones, we've had the brand building, we've had the really obscure ones that we'll potentially never know for sure where they're from, and then we've had this kind of opaque middle ground. And I wonder just how much is being lost there. I wonder how much we are getting the nudge and the wink, and it's suggested to us that the whiskey is what it is, and it's not really what it is. It could be something else, but in order to sell the product or to have the kudos associated with it, it may be suggested. I have to be honest with you and say that most of the people that I know that work in the industry, independent bottlers, people that work for the producers and things themselves, whiskey is so much about integrity from that respect that I don't think that there's much risk of that happening, truthfully. However, if you hear it from a pal or a friend or it's Chinese whispers or something, then take it with a pinch of salt, Even if it's a friend that you trust, you don't know how many people it's gone through before it's got to you. And as it's been already said in the chat, go on flavor and go on recommendation from the community. Absolutely. But if you get something that's at good value, a good price point, is well presented, it's available to you, and it's been recommended, are you really going to let the fact that you don't know what distillery actually made it, or you don't have anything in printed proof, stop you from enjoying it? I'm not suggesting that you should or shouldn't. I'm just posing the question. And I'll tell you that for me, no. I'll continue to buy these undisclosed distilleries. I might even continue to take gambles on them, because the action of one benefits the many. I'll also say that being a dynamic, the industry, by trying to control their brand, are placing that to be a potential dynamic. They're putting a structure in place where smaller, less in-demand, less cool, less kudos-driven distilleries could potentially have product out there that's kind of similar in profile and could pass themselves off either first-hand, second-hand, third-hand, or somewhere down the line as another product because this thing exists. So bear that in mind. Go on flavour, go on value, put that first, and you'll be nobody's fool, honestly. I hope I get to share this one and a few other ones that I've shared with you tonight with some of you here or anywhere in the future, because I'm very happy about this one. A light effervescence now. Clean. Just my ideal whiskey, honestly speaking. Anyway, let's get into what I think might be a brutal quiz. If you're up for it. Now watch, we were way up at 330 something because I've mentioned the word quiz. It doesn't matter. That's why we put the quiz at the end. Tonight is a fun quiz. It's on theme. I think it's going to be tricky. I think I would be struggling for a pass mark tonight, but it's intended, as always, to be fun. And it's multiple choice, so even the chimpanzees have a chance of getting 33% or 3 to 4 out of 10. 5 out of 10 is always a pass mark, and it's always multiple choice. Of course, Macallan Final Rare saying, don't forget to talk about Islay and Limburg, as you said earlier. Doc, I'm so glad you're here. So I'm going to be at Limburg. We'll be staying at the Tokoyo Hotel, which is in Frankfurt. We'll be taking the train. The Tokoyo Hotel is right next to the train station in Frankfurt, and it's a short train ride through to Limburg for the Saturday and Sunday at Limburg. I cannot wait. This is 2 years in the making, actually 3 years in the making, isn't it, Doc? It's been a long time that we've had to postpone this thing. It's not going to be the big celebration it was. It looked like, we'd booked out that entire hotel amongst the Barflies back in 2020. We've not really been confident to commit so far in advance, but I'm committed now. My flights are booked. My accommodation's booked. I'm going, and I cannot wait. Limburg, apparently, I'm told by everybody that's ever been there, is one of the coolest whiskey festivals anywhere in Europe. And finally, in a few weeks' time, I'm going to be going there. In June, from somewhere around the 17th or 18th of June, it looks like, for me, speaking personally, I'm going to be on Islay, hopefully for a week. So I'm not suggesting that there's an activity. I'm not suggesting there's any kind of events that we're going to schedule. It's not going to be that kind of thing. I'm just telling you that myself and a few other Barflies are going to be there. And if you want to be on Islay, if you're planning to be around, and you can be on Islay from the week commencing, I think the Saturday is the 18th, from memory, Saturday the 18th of June. For that week going forward, we are going to be hanging out on Islay. So I'll just let you know. And closer to the time, we'll start to share what distilleries we're going to be at and what days, what bars we're going to be drinking in, where we're going to be hanging out, all of that kind of thing. So we can all take this kind of virtual world that we enjoy so much. There's nothing virtual about it. It's absolutely real. But let it manifest a wee bit on Islay. That would be fantastic. There's a chance that I'll be in Campbelltown on the 17th in the evening as well. Still to be negotiated at home. Jason Whiskey Wise is saying Limburg has to be one of the best. I'm so glad that you say that, Jason. Fantastic. I'm excited about it. Nick Whiskey 101 is saying we should definitely do a blind flight of unnamed distilleries. And then nobody can know. But we'll all have had a nice night after it. Hellswood is saying 10 days to look forward to on Islay, but not until the end of September. Listen, you've been to Islay, Helen, now. You've already booked your trip back again. You've been bitten by the island. Fantastic. Long night, says Macallan Fine and Rare. That's okay, as long as we can sleep late in the morning, and I think we can. Fantastic. Listen, thanks for everybody hanging out tonight. There, it's going to drop under 300 now. It's quiz time. Everybody, it's quiz time now. You can all go off to your bed, but please pick it up on the replay if you want a wee bit of fun. Any chance, says Rob Halford, anyone is heading to the Leeds Whisky Festival? Listen, that's good, Rob. Rob's one of the Dramface team as well. Also, if you're going to the Croydon Whisky Festival this weekend, look out for a tall, handsome, I don't know what you would call his hair. I don't think it's in a style, but a young guy with an American accent called Alex. If you hear an American accent at the Croydon Whisky Festival this weekend, and it's a young guy with brown hair, fairly tall, I think. I think he's tall, I'm not sure. Ask if his name's Alex. He's a friend, and he's one of the Dramface team as well. He's going to Croydon. Fantastic. Ben is saying, what? I've only stayed up for the quiz. Listen, Ben, we're going to get Menno back on. Menno's not in tonight. He's got stuff on tonight and early tomorrow morning, but we've been chatting, and hopefully there's going to be a celebration Menno quiz coming up pretty soon. Daniel Vermaas is saying, tall and handsome, must be me. No, you'd be extremely tall and extremely handsome, Daniel. I would make that differentiation. And Thomas Elmer is saying, quiz makes the vPub. Thanks, Tom. I'm glad you're here for it. It's not dropping below 300. It's because I'm teasing you. But it's interesting to watch the kind of the analytics on the vPub. As soon as we hit the quiz, everybody's like, aye, good night. Thanks very much. Whiskey with Bobby Benny saying, Tom, tall, handsome, young. Oh, not me. And Jimmy Legg is saying, you could sit there silently drinking a whiskey and I wouldn't leave. Jimmy Legg, you star. Thank you so much. Alistair McPhail, my friend. I'll look out for Alex at the Croydon Festival. I think you've already made a tentative arrangement to at least shake hands and hopefully share a dram together, Alistair. I need a selfie. Hopefully a Barflies pose selfie as well. That would be amazing. Highland Hamish, good to see you, Hamish. Tickets just gone on sale for Inverness Whisky Festival Saturday. Ooh, the 2nd of July. Inverness is one of my favourite towns on this entire sphere. It's a fantastic city. I think I can imagine that would be a pretty good festival to go to too. Saturday, 2nd of July. I think I'm here. That would be amazing. I don't think the wife would be particularly happy. Falsgraph is saying, not too tall, not young, handsome as a matter of taste, and giving us a wee wink. Absolutely. Okay, everyone, let me know in the comments below what kind of whiskies you're enjoying that you may or may not know where they're from, and let me know if you think they're worthwhile. I think that on occasion they very much are, if we're in it for the flavour. If we're in it for something rare and we need to know the provenance and everything like that, I understand it's not going to excite everyone. But if I could have more whiskies like this, like that 14-year-old Islay, that 16-year-old Highland, that 21-year-old Highland, even that wee modest Highland Park 12, a bit pricey, but it's still a beautiful wee bottle to have on the side, honestly speaking. The Port Askegs, the Smokeheads, the Scarabus, Aerolite Lindsay's, so many more from Islay. And even, yes, these kind of odd alias bottles that are blended malts, maybe not blended malts, who cares? You sip a blended malt and you tell me you know for sure that it's a blended malt and not a single malt, I'll get down on my knees and I'll bow in respect. But I think it's often the case that you can. Andrew Butler is saying, I'll be at the Croydon event on Saturday and then at Dornoch at the end of October. So we're going to see our friend Andrew as well, kicking around to Dornoch at the end of October. Fantastic. This is good. This is why the Aquavitae Barflies page on Facebook was set up, so that we could help share where we're going to be, where we're traveling to, what distilleries we're visiting, what events, where we're going, and have the potential to meet up in real life. And the feedback that I get from those events is that it's always pretty spectacular. Okay, let's pull up this quiz. Okay, looks like I need to pull it up again. It looks like it's disappeared. It's asking me to sign in, which is very weird. That'll only take a wee minute. What's tonight? 31st of March. It's the end of March already. There we go. That's pulling that up now. Time for a Dram Gregor saying, I thought the Barflies page was for selling bottles. We will shut that site down very, very fast. Our admins, big shout out to Andreas, to Sid, and everybody that looks after the health of that Aquavitae Barflies page and keeps it as polite and positive and community focused as it is. We cannot trade samples. We cannot. We can't even put a post on there to say, can anybody help me source this? We can't do that. Facebook is brutal, and you're not speaking to a person. If it gets shut down, it's gone, and we'd be starting from scratch again. Espen has bought me a dram. You star. Thank you so much, Espen. I know you're a patron as well. It's wonderful for you to be in here buying me a dram too. Hi, Roy. I'm always bad at quizzes, but I love them. Skal is saying, let's start. I agree with that. Thanks, Espen. Cheers to you. We've got it. It's processed and it's in now. Let's pull this up. Do a quick screen share. There we go. Quiz at the end. Multiple choice. You're only playing against yourself. Well, maybe tonight I might share one of these wee drams. Who knows? Good luck, everybody. Question 1. Eagle of Spey, Blairfindie, and McTarnahans have been used to brand, in inverted commas, which distillery's output? So we're looking at a distillery that's used all 3 of those brands / aliases to identify their product. Is it A, Glengoyne, B, Glenmorangie, or C, Glenfarclas? The way the quiz at the end usually works is that the questions start off easy and then get progressively harder. So the first 5 should be harder than the second half. If you think this question is hard, take a sip of your dram, take a breath, read the question again, and the penny will drop. Vidar Berg Nielsen is saying, drinking a Blairfindie right now. How amazing. So we're hoping that Vidar is able to get this absolutely spot on. It's a knowledgeable whiskey crowd, let's be honest. And you tend to get this absolutely spot on. I don't think I'm telling tales out of school if I share with everybody the Eagle of Spey, the crucial word being Spey, Speyside, Glengoyne, and Glenmorangie are both Highlanders, so it can only be Glenfarclas. Absolutely. You guys kicked it out the park. I can see everybody screaming C. Question 2. Which of these actually bear the name of the distillery they're produced in? Consider putting a banana skin here, but let's just leave it. A. Old Pulteney. B. Kilkerran. C. Annock. Which of those three actually bears the name of the distillery that they're produced in? A. Old Pulteney. B. Kilkerran. C. Annock. Aye. Oh, this maybe is splitting the crowd a wee bit. Maybe this does deserve a bit of a banana skin. I can tell you that Annock C is produced at Knockdhu Distillery, so therefore does not. Kilkerran is produced at Glengyle Distillery, therefore does not. Old Pulteney is produced at Pulteney Distillery, and therefore does. So if you answered A for Old Pulteney, give yourself a point. Potentially you're sitting on 2 out of 2. Question 3. Chances of keeping this to 2 hours tonight. Slim. Spot the fake movie prop brand in this lineup. So basically, I'm going to give you 3 whiskies, 3 options, let's say. One of them is a fake. It's only used to brand in movies. It is a genuine whiskey that does not exist. The other 2 are aliases, undisclosed, modified, or hidden. Here we go. A. Glen Islay. B. Glengully. C. Glenluig. What I need from that list is for you to tell me which is the fake brand only used in TV/movies. I think it's a bit of a pop culture one, this. I'm not sure it was used. There's lots of brands out there like Glencallan, some others. I wrote some of them down. Clyburn, for goodness sake. McCleary. These are often brands that you see product placement in movies and TV shows for, and they really don't exist. It's just to avoid issues with advertising, legal issues. But I can tell you that B. Glengully was used in the cartoon series Archer. Glen Islay is genuine. Glen Islay was potentially from either Glenkeith or Strathisla using peated water back in the early 70s, back in the days of Allied's Follies, I believe they were called. And C, Glenluig, is actually another name for Dalmore. So B is the answer I was looking for there. The genuine fake movie prop brand in this lineup is Glengully. I suppose if you watched Archer, you would know that, but it might have been a tricky question otherwise. Whiskey with Molly Ben has nailed it, and a 3 out of 3, well done, as is Falsgraf. Colin, Dogs Have No Uncles, good to see you. Buddy Gabriel, well done, good to see you too. 3 out of 3, and Thomas Elmer as well on 3 out of 3. Nicholas, Andrew Butler, Jerry Miller, too slow. Well done, Rob. Bruno Martins, Des, Malt Brother Ray, Hellswood, Graham Young, so many still on 3 out of 3. Question 4. I don't know if this is Ardnave or Ardnavi, but let's go with Ardnavi, I guess. Glenburn and Lochendal are all from which distillery? I've only seen one of these in the flesh, but apparently they're all from this distillery. I'll give you a clue. It starts with a B, and you'll find it on the island of Islay. Is it A, Bunnahabhain, B, Bamore, or C, Bruichladdich? Ardnavi, or Ardnave potentially, Glenburn and Lochendal are all from which distillery? So you all know quite a bit more about modified, undisclosed, hidden distilleries than I might have imagined. But I should know better, shouldn't I? Peter Lee thinks C, Bruichladdich. The Whiskey Scout, good to see you, Robert. Good to see Peter. The Hogsheads, Dogs Have No Uncles, Jimmy Jazz, Jimmy Legg, Andrew Pearce. Everybody thinking it's Bruichladdich. Absolutely spot on. All of those brands are products from Bruichladdich. Now I'm going to show you a picture image. It's a slightly different take. This week I'm going to show you 3 bottles. I'm going to ask you Which of those three bottles that you see there? We've got a Glen Parker single malt Scotch whisky. We've got a Glen Callan single malt Scotch whisky and a Balmoor single malt Scotch whisky. But which one could you go out, theoretically, and buy today at these prices? A, Glen Parker, it's going to cost you about £25, thereabouts. B, Glen Callan, 50-year-old, it's going to cost you about £9,500 to go out and buy it today, thereabouts. Or C, Balmoor, 21-year-old, is going to cost you in the region of £350. Which of those is legitimate and purchasable for those prices? A, the Glen Parker at 25 quid. B, the Glen Callan, 50-year-old and £9,500. C, the Balmoor 21-year-old at £350. Jimmy Legg is saying, oh. Rob Halford is saying, Jesus, my eyes. What has Jesus done to your eyes, Rob? Oh, Jimmy Legg is saying, answer too soon. Listen, you're only playing against yourself, Jimmy. Change your mind. Balmoor, home to Peterhead Football Club, Ian Bruce. That looks like a new name. Ian, it's nice to welcome you in here. Great variation of the picture, Scapa is saying. Yeah. A different take. And you can see that there's a tiny, tiny wee ass hat there down in the right-hand side. I consider that this might be a wee bit of an ass hat question. But Graham Fraser is saying, I hope. Absolutely right. Glen Parker is a legitimate whiskey. That is a legitimate single malt whiskey. 40% ABV presentation that you can go out and buy today online. I found it on Master of Malt. There are other online stores available, but potentially your own independent bottler as well. Your own independent retailer as well. Excuse me. But Glen Parker, I've never tried it, by the way. It's not something I can recommend. I've never tried it yet. Is actually a Tom and Till single malt. Or let's say I am of the understanding, I believe it to be Tom and Till. Gabriel Welding, downhill from here, he says 5 out of 5. Fantastic, Gabriel. Helen is also the same. She's celebrating it as well. She's passed mark already. Sugar Kitty, the same. Stewie Baby, good to see you, Stewie. Falsgraf, Tom Elmer, Malt Brother Ray. Lots of people on 5 out of 5. Richard Hogg. Richard, so good to see you. Jimmy Legg, 5 out of 5. Fantastic. Question 6 might start to get trickier still. Oh, this is a bit of an ass hat because I'm asking you a Dramface question, but please take a dram, pause, read the question. Which of these sister distilleries, which has used an alias in the past, has featured in discussions, challenges, and high-scoring reviews recently on Dramface? Sister distillery, alias in the past, discussions, high-scoring reviews. Is it A, Manic Moor, B, Caperdonic, C, Pittivee? One of those used an alias to hide the distillery name or change the distillery name or a brand before the distillery name, however you want to put it, but they had another way of naming themselves in the past. But recently it's featured in some discussions on the Dramface podcast and also in recent Dramface reviews and scored a very generous score. It was not reviewed by me. A, Manic Moor, B, Caperdonic, C, Pittivee. No clue, says Ben Demon Hunter. I don't know. Double fist pump, says Whiskey Games Matt Bishop. Obviously, he's celebrating because he's been listening to the podcast potentially and reading the recent reviews on Dramface. We're celebrating like crazy. I don't want to spoil anything, but the things that have been happening with Dramface recently, it's just blowing everybody away. We're so excited about the uptake on it. Thank you for all of your engagement over at dramface.com. We are loving the fact that you guys are loving it. Absolutely. Those of you, the majority of you answered A for Manic Moor. Famously, Manic Moor was the distillery behind the Loch Dew black whiskey, the original Loch Dew 10-year-old black whiskey. It was only black because it was heavily coloured with colouring, of course. But much more recently, we've been talking about Manic Moor because it's available as an inexpensive, available, and often quite decent Speyside. And there's a recent review there, a release from Cadenheads that went down very, very well. And I'm looking forward to getting my hands on a bottle because I bought one on the back of the review. Question 7. A genuine single malt with a series of releases from Signatory Vintage. 2 of these are going to be fake. 1 of them is genuine. Tongue-in-cheek time. A, Angus Duff. B, Ben Duff. C, Craig Duff. One of those is a legitimate, genuine whiskey, and there potentially have been other releases from other indies in the past, but it's most closely associated with early 70s, typically vintages, and releases from signatory vintage. A, Angus Duff. B, Ben Duff. C, Craig Duff. So knowledgeable. I'm tearing through this wee drama, this wee Speyside, this undisclosed hidden Speyside. It's delicious. But I'm not pouring any more. I've filled the glasses that I suggested I was going to fill tonight, and I'm sticking to that. I've got a wee bit left here from my 14-year-old Islay, and I've got a wee bit left here of my, that's the Scarabus cast strength, and that's my Cooper's Choice Ward Head. That must be, it's clearly the Scarabus. I remember brother names, Jimmy Jazz. You remember brother names. You're one of the very few Barflies that has met my brother, who is indeed called Craig Duff. My brother is Craig Duff, and he's also that whiskey that I'm talking about. Craig Duff was similar to Glen Islay. We don't know, honestly speaking. Andrew Symington absolutely swears that it's I believe Andrew believes says that it's a Strath Islay, I think. But there's between Glen Islay and Craig Duff, it was projects between Strath Islay and Glenkeith back in the day, where they were not only using lightly peated barley, but they were using heavily peated water to experiment with these whiskies. Now, I have tried the 1973 at 32 years old. I've tried it at intermediate ages as well, between 32 and 40, and I've tried the 40-year-old as well. Back at a time that you could buy a bottle of that for about 100 quid. Now that's not the case. It's hundreds and hundreds of pounds. If you do stumble upon one and you see it named Craig Duff and you don't know what it is, if it's at a good price, buy it. Not only is it super interesting, but I can suggest to you that it's the ones that I have tried have been fantastically delicious as well. Thomas Elmer is saying, how about, obviously his alias, Thomas Elmer is obviously Ross Fudd, and he's talking about how about Fudd Duff. Hey, that's right. So that would be, if you just used one F, it would be palindromic as well, wouldn't it, Tom? Question 8. Which of these has been used as a malt alias? Which of these has actually been used as a malt alias? A, Reliant. B, Dauntless. C, Tactical. One of these has been used as a malt alias. In the past, it was from an independent bottler. I don't think it went much outside of a single independent bottler. But they obviously faced this problem where they had this malt and they were told that they couldn't sell it as the distillery name. So they had to come up with something else. So did they call it A, Reliant, or B, Dauntless, or C, Tactical? This should probably have an ass hat next to it. I think it's quite a tricky one. I only discovered this, or let's say rediscovered it or re-remembered it because of researching tonight's vPub. I would like to think that based on what I've just said, if I saw those three options, I might be able to pick it out. But honestly, I might slip up on this one. Sid Martin is saying C, Douglas Lang, I think. Well, you're absolutely partially right there. It is indeed C, Tactical. It was Old Malt Cask, which I believe is these days owned by Hunter Lang. But close enough, said absolutely. Alistair McPhail saying, Alex has just been in touch again about Croydon. I've said we'll have to do the pose. Aye, hopefully you can teach Alex exactly what the pose is. I'm not sure our Alex knows. Look after him for me, won't you, Alistair? 9. Banana skin and ass hat emoji here. I don't know if that means much. Can't remember why I put it there now. The most common branded malt and Roy's. Okay, this deserves a banana skin. And it deserves an ass hat. I apologize. I think I'm going to make it back to you that question 10 is not that difficult an ass hat this week because question 9 is a bit of an ass hat. The most common branded, that is modified, let's say, undisclosed or hidden malt in my collection is from which distillery? A, Clynelish. B, Deanston, C, Springbank. What is the most common that I have on my shelf? Yes, it's an asshat, and it deserves it, especially as you read that question. But you can also see that there's a banana skin there too. I'm trying to remind myself. Did I make any notes on it? I don't think I did. I don't think I did. It's a shame. I did. Okay, I did. Good. If it's a banana skin asshat, it won't be A then. I like the way you think, Colin. Dogs Have No Uncles is using that, and he's playing the game well. I researched recently what my pet distilleries were, and the way I worked that out is not how I felt about the distilleries, but I just did bottle counts to work out where am I actually drawn to? What am I actually buying more of than anything else? And as Colin's probably spotted out, it is Kalila. So it makes sense that I should have a lot of undisclosed or hidden, and that's true. Port Askig, Scarabus, things like that, things that I know to be Kalila, and many more on top of that as well. However, no. I have more Hazelburn and more Longrow. So it's modified. It's a brand. They are not made at Hazelburn Distillery. They're not made at Longrow Distillery. And that, by bottle count, is what I have more of here than anything else. And I'm kind of glad about that because it's very difficult to buy these today. So I'm going to eke these out. Pierre Cruff is in saying, better late than never. Good evening, Pierre. It's nice of you to join us just for last orders, my friend. Hey, you're never late at the vPub. Nice to welcome you in. And Molasses is saying, I thought this was mentioned in a recent vPub. Yeah, it was, Mo. But, buddy, Mike, I talked about Kalila being obviously the most I had by bottle count. It surprised me too. But that's not Springbank is the one that I have more of the modified brands from. Probably hate me for that. Falsgraph is saying 8 out of 9. Damn it, the 10 out of 10 will have to wait. Oh, sorry, Falsgraph. Sorry, buddy. Well, that's... Okay, I'm going to show that, but I won't say it outside, Jimmy. I'm not shy. I don't mind swearing. But if I can avoid it on the vPub, I do try. Petehead is saying, now we know where all the Springbanks go, says Petehead. Wordplay. Next time I'm bringing my lawyer for the quiz. I did put a banana skin in there, so it's not just words, it's images too. Absolutely. And Jimmy Legg actually said, oh, that's a shit question and answers. Apologies, Jimmy. That tells me that you got it wrong. I'm suggesting that there's a bit of an asshat at the end, but not the typical asshat that you would normally finish out on. So is anybody sitting on 9 out of 9 tonight? Chris Banks Wildlife, 8 out of 9. He's saying, bugger. So he's slipping up. And Jimmy Legg is saying, I'm glad that didn't ruin my 10 out of 10. Oh, fantastic. Pierre is saying, was hoping to meet you at the Village in Nuremberg. No, Limburg. I'm going to Limburg, my friend. Pierre, I don't know if you're going to make it to there, but that would be amazing if you were. The scores have fallen a wee bit. I've managed to trip people up in the back nine, but Black Fen is on a 9 out of 9. He's killing it. He's got a chance with this last question to hang on to be our 10 out of 10 tonight. Let's see if you can make it. No pressure, asshat on 7 out of 9. You're already there though, Ben. Don't worry about it. Whiskey with Molly. 10. Rochedu, Dunglass, and Dumbuck all have what in common? So clearly these are 3 alias names. Rochedu, Dunglass, and Dumbuck. A. Today, they'd fall under the same ownership. B. They are all partially triple distilled. Or C. In today's terms, they are actually blended malts. Rochedu, Dunglass, and Dumbuck all have what in common? They all fall under the same ownership. They're all partially triple distilled. So when I say partially triple distilled, I'm talking about Mortlach. I'm talking about Springbank, that kind of somewhere between 2 and 3 times distilled, 2.5, 2.81, whatever it may be. Or C, in today's terms, they are actually blended malts. Same ownership, triple distilled or blended malts, A, B, C. Good luck, everybody. Good luck, Black Fen. Let's see if we can get at least one 10 out of 10 tonight. That would be amazing. And I'm already over the 2 hours, so no, I never seem to make it anymore. But that's okay. It's the vPub. And I'm in no hurry if you're in no hurry. Black Fen, where are you, my friend? What are you answering? Are you following the crowd, or are you feeling confident on that one? Mike is saying dumb luck. Gordon Fraser is claiming 10 out of 10 for effort. Please, Gordon, you're welcome to take it. I shipped a wee package to you today as well. Blackfen has answered, and he's saying C. In today's terms, they are actually blended malts. I can tell you that Dunglass and Dumbuck are two single malts from the same distillery. Roche Deux is from another distillery, but they all fall under the same ownership today. Dunglass and Dumbuck are both from Littlemill, and Roche Deux is from Loch Lomond. So they all fall under the same ownership. Sugar Kitty, I think the majority went for C there, suggesting that they thought they were actually blended malts, potentially based on. That means that nobody got a 10 out of 10 potentially tonight. I managed to take it away from all of you. Not one of you got a 10 out of 10. I'm feeling bad. Andrew Butler is saying 10 out of 10. Yes, thank you. Well done. Somebody made it, and it had to be somebody like Andrew Butler, right? A veteran, a knowledgeable, erudite, studious veteran of one of the knowledgeable Barflies. Fantastic, Andrew. Congratulations to you. I'm looking for anybody else that's managing to celebrate a 10 out of 10 tonight. That was a tough quiz. So to see the healthy scores is fantastic. Lots and lots of pass marks, lots and lots. Matt 69 on a 7. Clear pass marks. Scott McNichols 6 out of 10. Oh, John Jimeno, interesting font using there, but it's good to see you in again, buddy. Not bad for a first timer. Oh, so that's a different name. So there's another name very similar to yours, albeit the font is very, very different, but not bad for a first timer on a 6 out of 10. Congratulations on your pass mark and welcome. Okawami got an 8. Superb. Gabriel Wilding as well. Fantastic, guys. Well done. Alistair McPhail, a 9 out of 10. Buddy, killing it. Superb. I remember his celebration. Remember when he was live on the vPub that night at the end of the year. Fantastic. Great scores. Nicholas, Too Slow, Des, Malt Minion, Whiskey 101, all getting 7s. Andrew Pierce scoring an 8 out of 10. Terrific. Andrew, what a score. Same as Falsgraf. Hellswood is saying she's happy with an 8 out of 10. And Peter Lee, absolutely. So you should be too. Okawami and Gabriel Welding, as I mentioned, on 8. Jerry Miller. Good to see Jerry also on an 8. Fantastic. Chris Banks Wildlife is saying Chris Banks Wildlife is saying he's well pleased on an 8 out of 10. Jimmy Jazz on 8 out of 10. I will take, despite question 9's ass hat. I'm only slightly angry with you, says Jimmy Legg. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. Andrew Butler is saying I've had Dunglass and Old Rush too. Fantastic, Andrew. And if there was anybody in here that I imagine to have tried both of those, I imagine that it would be you. So, I mean, Dunglass is going to be from, I don't know, the 80s, potentially older. Little Mill stopped producing in the early 90s, so yeah. Petehead is saying, and with that, I call it a day. Slajava, everyone. Frank, I hope you did okay in the quiz, and I hope you don't hate me. Falsgraf is saying, I will have to order some stuff from you, and I will have to ask you a few questions on the Speyside game after that. I'm here for you anytime, buddy. Thanks, Falsgraf. Thanks very much. Chris Brown is saying, sorry I missed the quiz, Roy. Was booking up for Islay. Oh, good for you, Chris. So he's coming along, at least for some of the days, from about the 18th of June this year on Islay. We'll be there. We don't know what distilleries we're going to be at. We don't know on what days, but we'll be on the island. It's not a tiny island, but it's not a big island. And when it comes to whiskey-themed and whiskey-themed spots, we're sure to bump into each other, especially if we arrange it in advance. So if anybody's interested in joining us for a week on Islay, or any of the days on Islay, honestly, sort out your accommodation, sort out your travel, sort out how you're going to get there, and through the Aquavitae Barflies page on Facebook, through YouTube, through email, whiskyaquavitae.com, however you want to get in touch, we should be able to meet. Pierre is celebrating a 2 out of 2. Is that counted like a 10 out of 10? Absolutely, buddy. It's 100%. You got 100% tonight. Fantastic. And Whiskey with Molly Ben is saying, thanks, Roy. My first vPub purely fueled by cups of tea. Okay. So you're, I hope it was still enjoyable for you. I hope you could have some vicarious whiskey enjoyment. Sometimes, for very many reasons, I encourage everybody to have a wee night off and just drink some tea. Michael Henry is chiming in. Dunbuck and Dunglass were 1960s and maybe 70s. I haven't even tasted them. And Michael Henry's the whiskey maker for Loch Lomond Group. The question was about that. Old Rush Stew is better forgotten about. Not Loch Lomond's finest spirit. So there you go. If you want honesty, it's the way of the barfly. And despite Michael being a whiskey maker, he's brutally honest as well. Michael, thanks for the insight and thanks for being in. Graham Fraser is saying, good second half of the vPub tonight for me, Roy. Thanks again. Graham, you're very, very welcome, and it's really nice to have you in. I'll be back next week. I do have a theme for next week, but it's not dialed in yet. I want to reach out to some friends. There was a thing I did last year that I thought was very good, but I think we can tweak it a bit, and I think we can bring it back and do it again and have a bit of fun. And of course, if I get the friends that I want to involve on board, I might be able to pull it off, and it might be some fun too. And of course, it's going to be blind tasting, but the blind tasting always has a wee bit of a point to it, a wee bit of a theme. That's kind of what I'm planning for next week. And then the week after that, I'll be on holiday. There won't be a vPub. Going to reach out to the usual suspects to see if they want to step up and do a pop-up vPub, and I'll be happy to publicize that and tell you where that's going to be. So stay in touch. I'll make sure everybody knows about it. Jimmy Legs bought me a dram. Angie says hi. She's fond of you too. I'm fond of both of you. Angie, I hope you're having a nice night. I hope you've got the energy required to put up with a handful like Jimmy Leg. Thanks to you both, and Jimmy, thanks for the virtual drama friend. Cheers. Cheers to you, Angie. All of you, that's that. All of these are nice whiskies, really nice whiskies. Easy to enjoy. Michael Henry, I agree with your assessment. It was only samples I had tried, though. And Thomas Elmer is saying, slant your barflies. Good night, Roy. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for another fantastic vPub. I don't know about you guys, but I always have fun doing this. And as long as I'm having fun, I'm going to be here. And it would just be a fantastic bonus if you had a wee bit of fun too. Look forward to welcoming you back next week. But until then, I'm going to raise a glass of... this Scarabus. That's what's in the glass. I'm not pouring any more tonight. I'll have this. I'll raise this glass and say thank you all once more. You're all very dearly loved. I look forward to hanging out with you again next week. Until then, Slanchava. Good night.